The municipality calls upon all public and private investors. Come to Nyandeni. We are open for business.
Ingqungquthela yotyalo mali liqonga apho uMunicipality athe wabe uyalenza. Injongo ephambili kuqinisekisa okokuba sirhweba sikwarherha abantu abanomdla wokutyala imali kule ndawo yaseNyandeni. Umzekelo, sikhangela umuntu wokusakhela into ekubizwa ngokuba yi-office park okanye udederhu lee-offices lokugcina abasebenzi ngabasebenzi bakarhulumente kakhulu nakakhulu abakumasebe ebekufanele okokuba asevise abantu baseNyandeni kodwa kungoku nje azinze nje phaya eMthatha eKSD. So sizama ke ukurhweba okanye ukurherha abafaka izimali bazofaka imali kuloo mhlaba waseNyandeni ukuze sikwazi okokuba sokhe i-office park. Uyawukhumbula ke okokuba ukwakhiwa kwa-office park kuzawunyusa amanqaku ethu kwi-retail kwezevenkile kuba kuzawufika abantu abaninzi abafuna ukuthenga. Kwangaxesha linye loo nto iza kukhokhelela okokuba okhiwe izindlu zokuhlala aba bantu. Kwangaxesha linye sijonge okokuba siveze amathuba sincedisa abantu bakuthi abatyala okanye abalima intsangu ukwenzela okokuba kwenziwe kumfaxango kwenziwe amayeza. Kukhona amakhwetshube noneyeza kwii-labs zeli loMzantsi Afrika njengoba sithetha elinyanga ikhensa. Baninzi ke nabanye ebebekhona bezobonisa umsebenzi abawenzayo wabo kwezandla. Abanye bokha iibhokisi, abanye bokha ifenitshala. So sijonge ke okokuba le nto kuthiwa ukurherha okanye i-investment summit liqonga elenzelwe okokuba abatyali izimali beze bazobona indawo yethu entle yaseNyandeni ukuze bathi besoyibona bayithande babone okokuba bangafaka igalelo elinjani nabona kwimo yoqoqosho lwale ndawo yethu.
I-host yethu ongumeya bawundamase okwanguFaku, u-MEC wethu ka-Public Works wale liphondo lethu laseMpuma Kapa, indwendwe zethu ingakumbi i-investors ezine-partners ne-resource persons nakuni nje xa ninonke ngobuhle benu ndiyanibulisa. Ndawuske ndinibulise ngesixesibe ukuba ndisuka ngapha emaxesibeni ndithi nantsi intatshingile. Let me start by saying it's quite an honor. I do know that umhlobo wam uba uJonas ndiyabona ngokwesithathu ekuthiwa uqhubekele sam ngokuthiwa mandibambe intaba. But what is most important, I'm going to just share a few things to you. And I want to assure you, I'm not going to deliver a keynote address. Those who know where people have put keynote address, I always scratch it and put keyhole address. Because with a keyhole, you bring a bunch of keys. You try, if this one is not working, you try another one. If this one is not working, you try another one until you get it right. At the same time, with a keyhole, you can peep through the keyhole and see the world on the other side. So I just want to raise a few things so that we journey together in this. If indeed I was preparing something that looks like a speech, which won't be long because a gala dinner can be spoiled by a long thesis, but something to make us reflect reflect as we return back to this workshop tomorrow. I would have said, in search of the soul of developmental and ethical leadership in times of great challenges and uncertainty. We are a country at a crossroads, and we are a world at a crossroads. And the decisions we take will determine the course we will follow. 50 years from now, many of us will not be around. And the future generations will not even remember what we were wearing. But they would remember if we make this a turning point. Our journey started in 1994. Today, almost 30 years later, we are not where we were in 1994. But surely, we are not where we intended to be. And our challenge is to define and understand the moment we find ourselves in and chart the way forward. Reverend Fina delivering the Tiosoga Memorial Lecture in 2011. He invokes the biblical journey of Moses, where he said, Moses leading his people out of the Pharaohs could have taken 8 days. But the destiny would take them on an off-ramp, on a detour that took them 40 years. The journey had started so well, but somewhere along the way, things turned sour. He goes on to say, this time is the time between times, and this place is a place between places, because it is not where they were, but it is not where they were intended to be. And it was not that time, but it was not the time of destiny. And they were in difficulties of the Sinai Desert, Besentlang. Some started doubting the journey they were actually going on. And they turned against each other. When you read and listen to our newspapers, you think it's a crime report. Gender-based violence, fire in Johannesburg, grandmothers are murdered in their homes. And you start wondering, the journey we started on a highway, how did we find ourselves on a detour and a gravel road? So meetings of this nature, Mayor, it's our collective effort to retrace ourselves, to retrace the route where we intended to be. Because we're in this time between times and place between places. Utio Soka had been away in Scotland for years. There were no aeroplanes at that time. You traveled for months on ship, depending on the winds and elements. When he returned back, you see the Table Mountain for some time, for almost a few hours. He saw the place from where he had docked and left. That's when it inspired him. So some of us may be paralyzed by the crisis, but the people we read about in history, out of a crisis they see opportunities. If Germany was reduced to a rubble during the Second World War, today it is the economic power hub in Europe, producing some of the best cars and engineering work. Mercedes-Benz, VW, you count them, Audi and so forth. If Japan in Hiroshima and Nagasaki was reduced and incinerated by atomic weapons, but today they produce some of the best technologies, Toyota and the rest. If Rwanda, as we were celebrating our first elections, they were witnessing almost 1 million people being killed, but today they are attracting investments and on the road to recovery. What right do we have to despair? But for that to happen, we must invoke those words of Frantz Fanon in the book, The Wretched of the Earth. When he opens one chapter saying each generation must, out of relative obscurity, discover its mission, fulfill it, or betray it. What is the purpose and the meaning of our life? When so many of people we know died during COVID, and we've been given an extra time to search for that meaning. And are we going to fulfill it, or are we going to betray it? Great leaders never plan for the next election. They plan for the next generation. Great leaders never leave a vacancy. They leave a legacy. Now we must take a stand here and now and say, siyawuliyeka nelilizwe silibone lichabalala, okanye sizawukwakha umda othi izani sakhe. Biblically, there was a time when the falling of the walls of Jericho was celebrated. Just like we celebrated the bringing down of the walls of apartheid. But the season now is the one of building. Kuba indonga Jerusalem ziwili. But for that to happen, we must press a reset button. There's no way we're going to make changes still using the same corrupted software that has brought us to our knees. When you go to a shop and say, my phone seemed to have a virus, they normally call you, the technicians, into a corner and say, unfortunately, we cannot save your files. We'll have to wipe out everything in order to reboot it and install new app and new software. There are times when we have to abandon the corrupted software so that we have a new operating system, which means we need a change of mind, without which we can no longer move forward. Alvin Toffler, writing in his book, The Future Shock, he was a futurist. He said in 1970, the illiterate of the 21st century will not be people who cannot read and write. That it will be the people who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. Our biggest challenge now, we have the courage to be vulnerable and unlearn things we have learned in order to relearn things that are fit for purpose. Are we prepared to diminish ourselves so that we're molded anew? And that is key. Baume, in these times of challenges, you choose between the two kinds of stone. When coal is subjected to extreme heat, it will produce the heat for a moment, but after that it is reduced to ash. But there is another kind of stone, gold. It needs to be heated to the extreme. And once heated to the extreme, its value is multiplied. It is purified. And we must go through this crucible. And as Martin Luther King Jr. says, if you have not discovered something for which you are prepared to die, you are not fit to live. Those who are used to the old ways will threaten some people. Some will be barbita and be killed along the way. But this is the new struggle of our time. You cannot see an Easter without going through Good Friday. As Bob Marley says, everybody wants to go to heaven, but none of them want to die. So, we focused on everything else because it is easy to focus on RTP, on this policy. But Madiba realized a long time ago in 1997 when he said, maybe this country needs the RDP of the soul. Because he knew that the RDP of houses, of electricity would not be sufficient. In the end, it was the soul that led us to the struggle. It was the soul that led us through our initial stages of transition. And it is that soul that is needed a new consciousness so that a new person can be born. Our problems are complex. We can no longer say government alone will do, but partnership.
Yes. Collaboration.
Civil society, business should be there. Unions should be there. Political leaders should be there. All the shoulders should be on the work. And each one of us must stand to be counted. But there are a few things I want to highlight and sit down. Our discourse about our constitutional democracy sometimes has slided into wrong ways. We are where we are because everywhere in the courts, everywhere we talk of rights. But no one talks about the other twin responsibilities. You'll never find any democracy that is functional where only rights and entitlements are amplified but no responsibility and obligation. Those go together. The second one, born out of that, do not, even in the moment of trying to assist, create dependency mentality. Create self-reliance.
Yes. Yes.
Otherwise, dependency, it's a wheelbarrow, you push it there, you leave it there, you will come after 2 weeks, you'll find it there. Ganti self-reliance, it's like an engine, you choke it and you pull it, and then it moves. The third thing, I traveled with Minister Tsele and all the MSCs for Minmek in Bloemfontein. We visited the infamous Mangao prison. So when I was giving the main address back, I said this prison is one of the best. State of the art, has cameras, fences, all the fancy gadgets. There's nothing wrong with the prison. But there's everything wrong with the mental outlook of those people looking around the prison. We become prisoners of wrong things. That has made this beautiful democracy a toxic space. There's nothing wrong with the prison. When we're doing the inspection of the forensic laboratories across the country, we're told our IDs and currency has features far more superior than some of the most advanced countries. So there's nothing wrong with our IDs, but there's something wrong with the software of the people handling the ID. Wow. The same way the Chinese wall, once built against the Mongols and other foreign attackers, the kings then said, it's all done. But after some few years, they started seeing the attacks. What was happening? The guards were being bribed. There was nothing wrong with the wall, but there was something wrong with the mindset of the guards. Who will guard the guards? As we try to unlearn the wrong things, we must remember what Samuel Johnson once said: the chains of habit are too weak to be felt until they are too strong to be broken. When habits and wrong ones come, you don't feel them. They massage you, they hypnotize you, they entice you until they are too strong to be broken. Which kind of society where factory outlets are closed in order to open prayer places, and you hope that the economy will grow? Which kind of place where churches opened every other week in the tents and everywhere, and yet immorality and crime grows exponentially at the same time? That's why in one of the addresses to the SACC, the title of my presentation was "The Church is a Crime Scene that must be surrounded with police records." And the reason for that is because church and Christianity itself is good, but some of the drivers have gone mad. The hardware is good, but the software is corrupted. It needs an update. Each time you put something new which says "do not steal," it comes in when you put that USB to say "memory full." I can no longer accept any other advice. I'm comfortable where I am. Each time you put this USB and you see sexual harassment, it says "memory full." You need to delete the files to create the space. Are we ready to delete? Because you have to die in order to be born anew. So, as I try to end, because remember, you may choose to say, "I want to be rich. I want conspicuous display of wealth." And each time you want all these kinds of gadgets, the big house, the big car, everything, nothing wrong with that. But once they start compensating for your inner emptiness, then it means you are in a state of nothingness when you think you're somebody. And when you die, you will be reduced to that thing in a tombstone. Born on this day, dash, died on that day. But those who will do right, they'll be immortalized. And that is key. Martin Luther King Jr., Chris Hani and others, things are named after them. Holidays have been made because heroes never die. But in the end, I want to say, for this to happen, we must revisit the African family, which has collapsed. If a family collapses, community will collapse. If community collapse, society will collapse. It doesn't matter how many police you'll bring, because the foundation is loose. We have to go back to the basics. And that software which generations had actually delivered us, Ubuntu, I am because we are. We must infuse it in everything we do. When that grandmother walks in, let that grandmother remind you of your grandmother. You'll see the attitude and service. And you'll see the beauty of Batupili. Because in that grandmother you see yourself. When that elderly person who can barely walk up the stairs, once you say, one day I will be that old, one day I'll need that assistance, your software suddenly is buffering towards a reboot, because you say, I am because we are, and I can never be until we are. So, as I close, I want to say the challenges we face, we mustn't think that we're alone. Around the world is boiling. We think it's cold here. Elsewhere there are earthquakes, there are floods, there are fires. Therefore, Kobani iemere kulondao nimebuwe. Even if we face all these challenges, as Martin Luther King Jr. said on that fateful day of 28th of August 1963, he said, even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. Let's keep hope alive. Thank you.